Welcome back, Canonites. Before we continue along with the Halo Infinite story breakdown, I wanted to take a small sidebar to discuss a feature of Halo Infinite that's not exactly insignificant, but one that I otherwise wouldn't be able to give due credit without a dedicated video: the high-value targets. Made up of a variety of individuals from across the banished species, each HVT comes with their own lore and unique weapon. Today, we'll break all that down, so let's begin. General Inka Saham first came to notoriety during the Human Covenant War, as will be the case for many of these HVTs, as shipmaster of the DAS-class Stormcutter, Heresy's Sorrow. Though a smaller ship, especially for the Covenant, Stormcutters were ideal strikecraft and scouts, and in the case of Shipmaster Inka, ideal for harassing supply lines and trade routes. Following the conclusion of the Human Covenant War, Inka entered an alliance with War Chief Escharum, pledging his ship and crew to the Banished. Inka would eventually grab the direct attention of the UNSC, and in 2559, a Spartan 4 lone wolf headhunter was sent to assassinate the general. Unfortunately, the Spartan operative was captured and tortured extensively. Not for intel, but for Inka's own pleasure. Since then, Inka Saham has been inducted into the Bloodstars, a banished Spec Ops team that has its origins within the original Covenant. Atriox, in fact, was once a Bloodstar warrior. Within the Banished, however, the group was rededicated to hunting and eliminating Spartans. By the time of his death, General Inka Saham led the Valor Guard of the Chosen, part of the 3rd Lance of the Banished 2nd Combat Element, and wielded the Rapid-Fire Pulse Carbine. Inka hails from Clan Saham, which is also home to Ordo Mal Saham, a Sangheili Honor Guardsman from Halo Wars 2. He served under Let Valir and followed his shipmaster into Banished service, eventually winding up on the Ark. Ordo would fall when his Scarab was hijacked by Spartan Douglas 042. Thav Sebarim was a Kaidan warrior, meaning he was the head of a Sangheili clan. Though elected to power by a clan's council of elders, a Kaidan is often among the best warriors of the clan. While his service within the Covenant isn't deeply detailed, Thav was one of the leading commanders the Prophets deployed against Reach, and later, against Earth. After the Great Schism revealed the truth of the Covenant religion, Thav quickly returned to Suban, a moon of Sanghelios, and home to the keep of Malastone, where Thav hailed from. As the Great Sangheili Civil War known as the Blooding Years began, the Kaidan would instead ally himself with the Banished, who valued his skill above his species. Since then, Thav has become infamous for a siege of Edruvan during the Battle of Harrow, which resulted in over 700,000 human civilians killed. During his time on Zeta Halo, Thav would acquire a modified Sentinel Beam as his main weapon, the Arcane Sentinel Beam, and served with the Warriors of Malastone in the 1st Lance of the 3rd Combat Element. Okro Vagaduun is probably the best known of these high-value targets, at least among fans, being one of the first HVTs we saw teased back in 2020. Like other Banished warriors, Okro had quite the distinguished service within the Covenant. Hailing from a long line of sword fighters, Okro would come to be considered one of the deadliest ground assets the Covenant had by the last decade of the Human Covenant War, earning him the title of Blade Master by the Minister of Resolution. Side note, Blade Masters typically have an AI suffix added to their name, such as Inslan Gadogai or Jaga Urdamnai. Okro is one of 2 known Blade Masters that lacks this AI suffix. Back to it, however, Okro would return to his birth world of Suban, the Blood Moon of Sanghelios, following the fall of the Covenant. He was quickly approached by Atriox to join the Banished, though only did so after years of watching his people's bloody civil war. Okro has since been inducted to the Banished's Bloodbrave, a sect of highly skilled Sangheili warriors, as a Bloodbrave Guardian of Suban, serving with the Blind Lance of the Banished 5th Combat Element. Okro Vagaduun would be part of the Banished force Atriox brought to the Ark in late 2558. Following Banished losses to the Spirit of Fire, Okro was assigned to a raiding party that would enter the Forerunner keyship that the Prophet of Truth had once used to travel to the Ark. The raid was costly, but successful in retrieving pieces of a slipspace crystal that were held within, pieces that would allow Atriox to return to the Milky Way galaxy. When Atriox did return, Okro was among the warriors accompanying the War Master, eventually following him to Zeta Halo as well. During the 6 months following the defeat of the Infinity, Okro would encourage Thav Sebarim to remain vigilant despite the Banished victory, reminding the Kaidan of the demon which plagued the Covenant. It's somewhat ironic then that Okro would fall to the Master Chief. Before his end, Okro wielded the Duelist Energy Sword. The higher ranks of the Banished are not solely for Sangheili and Jeral Hanai. Unlike the Covenant before it, even species usually regarded as lesser can rise to power and rank, such as the ruthless Ungoi known as Bipbap the Vanquisher. Once a bodyguard for high-ranked Covenant officials, he was in service to the chieftain Tartarus, where Bipbap would earn his reputation, slaughtering scores of his own people who decided to side with Sangheili during the Great Schism. After the Covenant's collapse, Bipbap would work as an assassin for hire on his homeworld of Balaho, earning him the title Vanquisher. He's particularly well known for numerous acts of destruction on the former human colony of Venezia, where his relentless pursuit of his targets and the collateral damage that followed resulted in over 830 human casualties. During his service in the Banished, Bipbap served in the Heart of Tala, named for the Ungoi home system, part of the Alpha Pack in the 9th Combat Element. He wielded a modified disruptor, the Calcine Disruptor, before meeting his end at the hands of the Master Chief. High Sumpter Briglard was another Ungoi with a particularly nasty disposition. Inspired by the violent and ruthless nature of the Jiralhanae, Briglard gained notoriety towards the end of the Human Covenant War for his vicious and sadistic behavior on the battlefield. It even earned the Ungoi a high-priority target designation among Arbiter Thav Sebarim's forces. It's only natural, then, that such an Ungoi would find his way to the Banished, where his violent nature would earn him both the respect of his peers and a position of authority. The High Sumpter would be part of the Beholders of the One Vapor, seemingly a meta-play on Keepers of the One Freedom, a Jiralhanae-led Covenant faction that held to the belief of the Great Journey, part of the 4th Lance in the 8th Combat Element, and came to be known for both his higher-than-average kill count for an Ungoi and the particularly disturbing ways he would carry them out. High Sumpter Briglard equipped himself like an Ungoi mule, ensuring he had easy access to a variety of weapons, though his main weapon appeared to be the unbound plasma pistol. Next, we have the highly skilled Rutian Kigyar marksman, Archcordat Barroth. Incidentally, Kigyar come in 3 major subspecies. Rutian, the kind seen in Bungie's games, which primarily hail from Root, one of 2 supercontinents on the Kigyar homeworld of Aeon. Ebiesh, the kind seen in Halo 4 and 5, hailing from the isolated volcanic continent of Ebiesh. And Tavauan, traditionally referred to as Skirmishers, a subspecies that hails from the asteroid colony of Tavau. Keep in mind though, Skirmisher is a title, not a species. That'll be important later. As for Barroth, the Kigyar would earn the title of Kordat for his exceptional skill and virtually unblemished record, with at least 271 deaths attributed directly to the Archcordat. This naturally caught the attention of the Banished and earned Kordat induction into their Bloodstar ranks, with the hopes that he could emerge a lethal Spartan killer. While in the Banished, Bardoth wielded a modified rifle, the Stalker Rifle Ultra, and operated with the Scalera of Chuot, part of the first cell in the Banished Recon Combat Element. Scalera of Chuot is named for Chuot, the gas giant the Kigyar homeworld of Aeon orbits. Coming to our first Jiralhanae HVT, we have Zeretus the Scourgemaker, Battle Officer of the Lance of the Rising Star, Ada Pack, 3rd Combat Element. One of the earliest members of the Banished, Zeretus has since become a critical part of Banished exploratory efforts. While searching for Forerunner relics, Zeretus is known to destroy anything in his way, such as when he ordered the sinking of a UEG research colony on the ocean moon of Lagolim, which resulted in the deaths of 1,244 scientists and analysts. Zeretus was another Banished commander who would join Atriox on the Ark, later taking part in the raid on the Anodyne Spirit, the Prophet of Truth's former keyship. He would return to the Milky Way alongside Atriox, Okro Vagaduun, and others, before serving on Zeta Halo. On the Ring, Zeretus was put in charge of the research outpost Annex Ridge, tasked with studying the mysterious stone rings that dot Zeta Halo's landscape. Zeretus would not be present for Annex Ridge's destruction, however, instead hunted down directly by the Master Chief himself. While the Captain's modified M41 tracker would make for a difficult fight, it was no match for the Spartan. Captain Balkarus might be one of the most fleshed out of the high-value targets in Halo Infinite, previously appearing a few times in Halo Wars 2's Phoenix Logs. A veteran warrior, Balkarus once served directly under Atriox's command, accompanying the War Master on several critical missions, including the mission to the Ark. On the Ark, Balkarus seemed to be largely in charge of the Banished's Ungoi reserves, tasked with keeping them in line and providing replacements for, quote, misplaced Ungoi. During the second battle of the Ark, Balkarus had to deal with 2 Ungoi desertion attempts following action by Spartan Alice 130, and later had to put a stop to rampant instances of Jiralhanae using Ungoi for entertainment of the fatal variety. He would also work under the Megalith Golo pair known as Colony. Balkarus was one of the commanders who Atriox brought back to the Milky Way with him, later serving on Zeta Halo in the Exodus Guard, part of the Glelt Pack in the Advanced Combat Element. A ferocious officer known to kill his soldiers for even the slightest hesitation, Balkarus' ultimate goal was to join the Bloodstar Spec Ops group, though he would never see that dream achieved. During his tenure on Zeta Halo, Balkarus wielded the modified Riven Mangler. The Jiralhanae known as Engadon began his career as a mere Covenant foot soldier, and eventually selected to be part of a squad that would be thrown at the front lines of battle with little regard for their lives. Engadon was among those that departed the Covenant alongside Atriox and Decimus, following their rebellion during the Battle of Elgolis. Returning to his home, Zomar, a city on the Jiralhanae moon colony of Tish, Engadon would rally those present to join the Banished, becoming a chieftain in the process and founding his own warrior band, the Bulwark of Bone. Under Atriox, the chieftain would carve a violent path through human colonies, the large-scale operations often leaving the colonies crippled. Before his death, Chieftain Engadon wielded a modified gravity hammer, the Rushdown Hammer, and his Bulwark of Bone was assigned to Alpha Pack in the Banished First Combat Element. The Jiralhanae chieftain known as Ik'Novus the Devourer may well be the most interesting character in terms of lore connections. Ik'Novus once served with the chieftain known only as Thrallslayer, aka the chieftain from Halo Wars 1, earning the title of Devourer for the cruel practice of eating severed limbs of his still-living prey. In 2535, he took part in the destruction of human cities during the Battle of Jericho 7. This battle was, incidentally, the very first conflict described in Halo media, appearing in the prologue of Halo: The Fall of Reach, a prequel book that released just a week before Halo CE. Jericho 7 was also the home to future Spartan 4 Jameson Locke, and Spartan B312, better known to fans as Noble 6. And since Spartan 3s were specifically recruited from children orphaned by the war, you could say that Ik'Novus is partially responsible for Noble 6's existence as a Spartan. Back on topic though, Ik'Novus would rise through the ranks of the Covenant, becoming a chieftain and eventually breaking away from the Covenant. He and his pack, Wariel's Wrath, joined the Banished in 2550, shortly after their founding, where he would continue to lay waste to human colonies, while additionally attacking anything that stood in the way of the Banished. Ik'Novus would be assigned to the 4th Lance of the Banished First Combat Element, and wielded a Gorespike cannon and modified volatile skewer. Wariel, by the way, is one of the 3 now former moons of Doisak. During his time in the Covenant, Arthoc came to prominence while serving under Koth the Renderer in the Brothers of Unending Ire, where he led nearly 4 dozen individual assaults on colonial sites. The most notable of these was the surprise attack on the colony of Tercera, ending in the deaths of 3 full ODST squads. Tercera, by the way, is the setting for the Halo 4 map Vertigo. Captain Arthoc would continue to serve with the Brothers of Unending Ire, eventually joining the Banished alongside the rest of the pack, where they served in the Dradix pack as part of the 2nd Combat Element. During the Installation 07 conflict, Arthoc would serve alongside Chieftain Tremonius during the assault on the Reverie, and wielded the modified Ravager Rebound before ultimately losing his life to the Master Chief. When it was revealed that Halo Infinite would see the return of the Skirmisher enemy unit, people were fairly excited to see the Tavau and Kig-Yar return. However, as revealed in a more recent issue of Canon Fodder, it turns out that the Skirmisher has a much deeper history within Kig-Yar culture, stretching back to even before the species colonized other parts of their home system. While the role was exclusive to Tavau and Kig-Yar within the Covenant, the role has seen a resurgence within the Banished, many Rutian Kig-Yar also taking up the Skirmisher mantle. One such Kig-Yar was Ship Mistress Writh Kul. Born in the Tower of Ventnos on the asteroid colony of Esed, Writh rose to prominence, particularly among Tartarus' circle, following the outbreak of the Great Schism. Her intellect and strategic wisdom made her ideal for the role of Naval Combat Architect, a role that saw her take down over 185 UNSC capital ships. When the Covenant finally fell, the shipmistress took her ship, the Dagger of Mercy, and its crew, and searched for Forerunner artifacts to sell on the emerging post-war cross-species black market. While certainly lucrative, Writh soon longed for battle once more, seeking out Atriox and joining the Banished, where her Thieves of the Claw served with Delta Pack, part of the 3rd Combat Element. She also wielded a deadly Needler, the Pinpoint Needler, capable of locking onto targets for added lethality. Our next HVT is probably the most mysterious of all, simply by being part of a new species introduced in Halo Infinite, the Gaskira, better known as Skimmers. The Skimmers seemingly first appear following the release of the Harbinger sometime during March or April of 2560, and in that time, one group of Skimmers appeared more well-armed than other Skimmer patrols. The leader of this group, labeled Skimmer Alpha, wielded the modified Purging Shock Rifle. Little is known about the individual or its species, but they represent a threat to UNSC operations on Zeta Halo. Oddly, the target dossier for Skimmer Alpha comes from Spartan Hudson Griffin, the Spartan 4 Master Chief rescues from the tower. Griffin was captured just prior to the fall of the Reverie on February 2nd, 2560, and reportedly remained at Chakloak's tower until he was set free by Master Chief 4 months later. Thus, he shouldn't have had time to make the report that became the target dossier for Skimmer Alpha. While this could be the result of a production oversight, I think it might be possible that Griffin saw these skimmers during his time in the tower, perhaps managing to scrounge together some intel in between torture sessions. The only other solution would be that the skimmers emerged much sooner than previously believed, but that doesn't seem to line up with what we know from the audio logs. Ever since the reveal of Colony, the Megalogolo bond pair that appeared as a leader in Halo Wars 2, I was hoping for more unique beings like them. And luckily, 343 managed to sneak one in with the hunters known as Myriad. Now, before we discuss Myriad, we need to talk a little bit about Legolo and their Gestalt forms. The Legolo are eel-like creatures, and individually, they aren't that smart or capable. However, the Legolo can link with each other both physically and neurologically, forming large colonies that can take on a variety of forms known as Gestalts. These Gestalt forms have a number of purposes and capabilities, though the best known is the Megalogolo, or Hunter form. Though rare among the Legolo naturally, the Covenant found the Hunter form ideal for use in combat. Megalogolo colonies continue to grow and expand even when in Gestalt form. When a colony grows too large, it'll split into two beings, known as a bonded pair or bond brothers. Despite having two bodies, the pair remain extremely close and share a deep and mysterious bond. When one is killed, the remaining brother will often go berserk. If the surviving bond brother lingers for an extended period of time, it may enter a depressed state. While individual Legolo aren't too bright, their ability to link their neural systems makes the various Legolo Gestalt forms highly intelligent. In the case of Megalogolo, the UNSC has recently observed increased intelligence and individuality among some hunters, such as Colony from Halo Wars 2 or the Swarm Lord enemies featured in Halo 5's Warzone. Most of those bosses are canon characters in some regard. Installation 07 also saw a pair of these more intelligent hunter pairs, known together as Myriad. Responsible for the deaths of 2 Spartan fire teams, these intelligent hunters were nothing to scoff at. Within the Banished, Myriad led the Horde Swarm of Sphere as part of the 5th Lance of the 1st Combat Element, and was outfitted with the Backdraft Cinder Shot. Sphere, by the way, is the Legolo home system. Though the UNSC notes that hunter pairs like Colony and Myriad are unique, this is not to say that hunters are typically dumb. Megalogolo have their own unique culture, they recite war poetry, and they can speak without machine assistance. They also have their own naming conventions, with typical Megalogolo names being comprised of 3 parts. Their personal name given at birth, their bond name taken between bond brothers, and a line name coming from the most successful Megalogolo of its ancestors. Finally, we come to Wraithmaster Ordo Mal. During his time in the Covenant, Ordo racked up a staggering 654 confirmed kills against UNSC personnel, making him unrivaled among Sangheili Wraith pilots. Following the Covenant's fall, Ordo returned to his native keep and brought together a network of feudal raiding parties under his mercenary leadership. It wasn't until the Sangheili Civil War began to wane that Ordo was approached by Atriox. In the years since, Ordo Mal has increased his kill count to over 1,200, many of those taking place during the Banished raid on Palkanar, a UAG colony. Finding favor with Escharum, he was awarded the title of Wraithmaster. On Zeta Halo, he served with Capra's Grief, part of the Hydor Skrill pack in the 8th Combat Element, and wielded the Scatterbound Heatwave. Incidentally, Capra is a continent on Sanghelios. Hydor Skrill, on the other hand, isn't something that's appeared in the lore before, but given its similarity to Helioskril, it may be another form of life native to Sanghelios. And that for now will wrap up our look at the high-value targets for Halo Infinite. In terms of lore at the very least, these dossiers really add some interesting corners to the Halo universe, while also giving hints at the Banished military structure in ways we haven't seen before. I hope future campaigns can do stuff like this, even if such an extensive list of targets isn't always feasible. Of course, if there were just an in-game codex, 343 could expand on so much more than just HVTs, but that's not what this video is about. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The Halo Infinite story breakdown will of course continue soon, but until then, this has been Halo Canon. I'll see you all next time. Thank you once again for watching Canonites. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, maybe even share it around, both of which help the channel. And if you aren't subscribed already, consider becoming a fellow Canonite and hitting that notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. Halo Canon now has a Discord server, which you can find linked in the description box below. If you like discussing any aspect of Halo's lore, well, that's what we specialize in. Thank you all once more, and keep on being awesome.